Hi, I'm Gabrielle Calvocoressi, and I'm so excited to read you the poem A Lovely Love, Lillian's, by Gwendolyn Brooks. This is a poem I wish I had read when I was a young queer kid in rural Connecticut, very conservative part of Connecticut, um, who also has a learning disability, a visual disability, and who just like kind of had a really hard time finding my place, figuring out where I fit in. Um, if I had been lucky enough to have the great poet Brian Tier introduce this poem to me when I was 13, 14, right after my mom had died, um, instead of when I got to first hear it for the first time, which was when I was, I guess, almost around 28 years old, which was also a gift. But gosh, I think about how different my life really might have been. In some ways, because this poem is a sonnet. And when I was in high school and when I was in middle school, I thought sonnets were these really rigid things that I could not write and I could not scan. I did not really understand how to hear meter. And so, in some ways, the forms made me feel kind of left out. And I already felt left out a lot of the time. If I had read this poem by Gwendolyn Brooks, which is a love poem and which takes the sonnet and allows that rigid architecture, those boundaries, those walls, to create a space of safety in which love, desire, personal freedom can occur, I think that it would have changed my whole understanding of what poetry could do. I came to that understanding later in my life, and that was cool. But gosh, I think about this poem and the energy of it, the this kind of queer privacy of it. I don't know how many of you have already found a space where you can really be yourself with someone else, and in a way that makes you feel so free. This poem talks about that, and it allows the form to help one do that. And it doesn't deny the danger, right? We hear all the time that it gets better. I don't know. I don't know that I think it gets better, but I think we find our communities, and I think we find our spaces of safety, and we fight for those spaces of safety too, and we hope to broaden them. This is something this whole poem fights for in its way. Gwendolyn Brooks, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest poet that I can think of in the last 100 years, a poet who means so much to me. Yeah, it makes me a little bit speechless to think about this person, this Black woman, this extraordinary figure in the world and in Chicago. I was once on a plane and I sat next to someone and we got to talking about poetry, and she said that when she grew up on the South Side in Chicago, Gwendolyn Brooks taught uh, poetry workshops in at the Institute of Art in Chicago for free. And I think about Gwendolyn Brooks and poetry and community, and also Gwendolyn Brooks, maybe the greatest formal master of our time. So I am excited to read this poem for you. My eyes aren't so great. I have this visual disability, so I'm going to read it from my screen, and I hope you know though that I'm here and I'm thinking of you. A Lovely Love, Gwendolyn Brooks. Lillian's. Let it be alleys, let it be a hall, whose janitor javelins epithet and thought, to cheapen hyacinth darkness that we sought, and played, we found, wrought, make the petals fall. Let it be stairways and a splintery box where you have thrown me, scraped me with your kiss, have honed me, have released me after this. Cavern kindness smiled away our shocks. That is the birthright of our lovely love. In swaddling clothes, not like that other one, not lit by any fondling star above, not found by any wise men either. Run. People are coming. They must not catch us here. Definitionless, in this strict atmosphere. How amazing to be definitionless, and how incredible to have a poem that's dedicated Lillian's. Not all the versions of this were allowed that, and What freedom that we get to read it with that dedication. I'm Gabby Calvocoressi, and it's been a pleasure to read A Lovely Love by Gwendolyn Brooks.